Just
That's a composite person. I lived on Christopher Street in the 1960s and kept that apartment really till 1995. And it was in those years particularly the gay area. In the 1960s particularly, I was probably the one straight guy on my block. But, you know, they were all my friends. You know. But at least these guys were in open rebellion. And they were, many of them, even there were a few. One of them was W. Kellogg III, who was paid by his parents never to come home. And he would go up and down on the street wearing costumes. Like he'd be in full Renaissance costume with a big hat and this panache feather and everything else. And it was great. And I'll never forget, I was there around 1969 with the famous Stonewall story. I think many people have heard about this. There was a bar right next to mine. A 55 bar was mine, and next to it was a Stonewall right out Sheridan Square. And the police used to just come and beat everybody up just for fun. But there's also too many places out there where they have these fitness instructors, so these big guys fought off the police. The first time they really fought back. And the next weeks, I'll never forget, walking up and down the street, people were wearing the most marvelous, outrageous costumes, and they were terrific. And I think, you know, I was so proud of them. And then the Halloween party that year, Halloween parade, I followed it for blocks just because there were so funny things. Imelda Marcos, they had a float with thousands of shoes hanging from it.
I love it.
And stuff like that, but it was wonderful. And, you know, they've been validated. That was really the turning point about the whole gay revolution, probably right at that moment. And there was one guy named Albert who lived in that neighborhood. Remember Albert?
Sure.
And he would wear these mink coats and he'd sing in falsetto things like the Bell Song. And you know, and he could practically do the Queen of the Night aria. He had it, I see. And the most amazing guy. But that's one of the people we're thinking about. But Arnold had several friends, a composer named Ben Weber, who used to dress up in drag and do recitals, you know. And there was also a great guy who still writes for the Opera News and is also a teacher at Juilliard. His name is Ira Sif. And I think it's finished now. It was a thing called La Grande Shena Opera Company, where all these guys would come in costumes doing a lot of the female parts. And they were kind of, you know, instead of Beverly Sills, there was one called Sylvia Bills. And Ira's stage name was Vera Glupi Burch. And, you know, I remember the last one of the shows was him doing his 15th farewell recital. So, but there were also a lot of, you know, gay murders on my street. And especially if you got down toward down toward the Hudson River, it was pretty rough. And that's an area you did not go after certain hours.
Oh, gosh.
And so it was the kind of thing that happened. So that was a story. It was a composite of various people that Arnold and I both had known. And so it was not a person.
For me, I still think of Charles, our friend. He had a company called the Ridiculous
Charles
Theatrical Company. Charles loved them. And you can get, there's a collected book of his plays you can find. He did Gallus, which was about Maria Callas. And, you know, just the grandness of his gestures and expressions and the...
Remember Leonard Slack was in the audience?
Oh, yes, and he looked kind of embarrassed. I didn't even know, when I was growing up, nobody talked about being gay. I didn't know what it was. I was in my first show, and my boyfriend says to me, John's gay, the guy that ran the company. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, Peggy is John's Beard. That was his girlfriend. You know, that's a girl that goes with a gay guy. She's called Beard, because he could go out and look straight. You know, he had a girlfriend. And I thought they were a duo. And I said, what do you mean? And he says, well, John likes men. And I'm like, so? You know, I just didn't, you know, raised Catholic, you don't talk about it. My mom never told me the facts of life. I sort of learned them, you know. But I was so happy when I found out there were men that weren't interested in women. It's like, you mean not every guy's going to hit on me? That's great. Because, you know, a certain age, every guy's always looking, you know.
And you were doing a late show at the, were you at the?
I was at the Waldorf, with my harpist who was gay. And anyway, so we'd finish our act and I'd take the subway home. I'd get home like 11:30 midnight. I felt safe on Christopher Street because the gay guys were around, but they didn't.
We had male prostitutes out there who would stand in the doorways.
They called
on the weekends you couldn't even get across the street.
Those guys? My image for George was Charles Ludlam, and you can get that old book. I think from Dover. It's the some of the Del Sardi pictures and some of the opera, the famous opera stars, and they're in poses doing, you know, different roles, Tosca or Madame Butterfly, right? And so look at those. And at the very end, when the pianist is playing, you have time for 4 poses. Do 4 different ones. Show how grand you could be, how terrifying.
Especially at the top of the piano. That part's where it really going. Then you have to do your crowning one. So find your most outrageous pose. You probably can look up Del Sarti, D-E-L-S-A-R-T-E. I'll bet you it's on Google.
Oh,
but you'll be right there, because that was the whole thing. This was the outrageous kind of overacting they had to do before electric lights got into the theater. When they had gaslight, it was a little bit less strong, quite a bit less strong. That's why they had heavier makeup, and they had to do big gestures because you had to deal with the fact that it was not that bright of a light.
Right.
And no close-ups.
No,
I remember that book, Stanislavski. He talked about an actor who could create a close-up. He could draw you.
Shaliapin.
He said he managed to, this is before cameras, the whole audience just was fixated on his face. So I thought of that, wow, I could create those kind of things. So I'm always thinking about stuff like that when I'm looking at myself in the mirror. How does this look? How does that? Oh, no, that angle's not good. It needs to be a little, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.